All right, I think we're live, so are we not live? Are we good to go? Lovely. Good morning to all our participants and our audience here today. We're really excited to have you, and we thank you for coming in on a Friday morning. Welcome to one of our webinars on behalf of the Mental Health Lab. So we are Impact Lab 8 from Taylor's University for Mental Health and Wellbeing. We are from specifically the hub of workplace well-being and productivity. And we want to firstly give a few shout outs, a few thank yous to those who have been able to make this webinar possible. First and foremost to Kitty Singh and Chin Chiming, who have been working behind the scenes. You won't be able to see them here because they're the ones handling all the tech at the back, but they have been tirelessly working with me to ensure that the webinar has been going on well, and we're really grateful to them, as well as our hub leader, Dr. Karen Sin. We also want to acknowledge that we're in a very interesting and cool setting at the moment. You may be seeing us as if we're on TV, but the truth is we're coming in live from Taylor's University Vortex Lab. So on behalf of our team, we want to thank Dr. Charles Naidu, the director of the Vortex XR Lab, as well as his team Faisal, Laili, and Clifton, who are all working very, very carefully to ensure audio, video, everything is going smoothly. Let me quickly introduce myself as we're going into our webinar on instilling a safe and positive work culture. I'm Jolene Chong, and I'm a corporate speaker as well as a module leader for Taylor's University's life skills modules. So we teach emotional intelligence to all first-year students, and that means that my passion for mental health is very strong. So I do this both in Taylor's as well as on the side to others as well. I'm very pleased to be here and to introduce our two panelists who have come from different industries, I'd like to say, and I'd like to take a few moments just to know and introduce them as well. So first we have to our middle here, David Wong. He is currently a clinical psychologist. He graduated with a master's in clinical psychology from Help University in Malaysia, and he also serves as an assistant manager under the team at Taylor's University for the SD Life Skills team as well. He is someone who is very actively serving both in his clinical side, his work at Taylor's, as well as in church where he works with different ministries. So thank you, David. We're very excited to have you here today.
Thank you.
On his right, or rather his left, and my furthest left, is Sharon Cheah. She is a human resource or HR consultant and has been doing this for about over 10 years of experience for areas of talent management, profiling, behavior profiling, as well as people development. So she represents the perspective of somebody who would have been working with many different industries and conglomerates. But not to fear, she is also very well trained in the area of coaching. So she is a certified coach under the International Coaching Federation. And to top it off, she is also doing a PhD at Monash University. So her PhD revolves around how purpose and meaningful work becomes a calling for others. So I hope that with her expertise and David's, we'll be able to have a full discussion today. So thank you so much, Sharon. We're really glad.
Jolene.
Yeah. Let's get into the questions. Now, let me very quickly share the agenda of how our webinar is going to be running today. We have 3 parts of questions. The first, starting with context building. We want you to know why are you here as either a leader, a manager, somebody who is able to make a change in your workplace. And we also want to share about current issues, which will be part 2. After which, we will allow for questions from the audience, if there are any. So please type your questions as you think of them into the Zoom chat, and we will have someone to bring the questions that we can answer and hear from our panel as well. At the end, we will have questions about how can this be a potential solution? So why are we discussing it? But how can building a positive work culture be important? So our Impact Lab 8's vision and mission is to be able to increase that ability to have essential well-being, and more specifically, because we are in Hub 3 for workplace productivity and well-being, we want to ensure that there is that optimal flourishing and that anyone can do it, not just someone from a very experienced background. So we hope that this will be a fruitful and important source of information for you today. Let's get started. So a kind reminder to the audience, please just write as many thoughts and questions as you have onto the Zoom chat. We will address them in the second component of our webinar. Our first question today helps us to build the context on why we have decided on this topic on a safe and positive workplace culture. So I'm curious because I work with university students and I work with people in mental health, and I have an idea of a safe space. We all do. From your perspectives, and I really want to emphasize from your backgrounds and your perspectives, what is a safe space? And especially, how does it translate into working cultures and environments? Is a safe space only for university? Is it only for certain corporations? We'd love to hear what you would define as a safe space. I'll start with maybe Sharon, your thoughts.
Thanks for that question, Jolene. As you were just talking about a safe space, I recall recently having a conversation with an ex-colleague, and this is a large organization, and he was telling me how when they have meetings with the senior management, everyone's busy chattering, waiting for the MD to walk in. And when the MD walks in, there's pin drop silence. And this calls to mind what a safe space is. From my perspective, it's probably termed psychologically safety in the workplace. And it means that you can feel free to be yourself, say what you want to say, and not be worried about being criticized or even punished for speaking your mind. Yeah.
That's a very interesting story, and I think it's so relatable because all of us have been like, don't talk, the boss is coming at one point in our lives, even if it's a teacher or something, right? Yeah. I totally hear you. Thank you. David, do you have anything to add to that? Is it similar?
I just want to add on a bit on what Sharon mentioned, like safe space where we can share what we want to share. Lots of times, sometimes certain employees, you also have your own WhatsApp chat group whereby someone else is excluded. I guess that's where you you feel safe also. I would like to use maybe a metaphor when it comes to safe space. I would love to describe a safe space like a soft mattress where you can actually fall down, allowed to make mistakes, and then you are coached to rise up again in this journey itself. So I would say that a safe space is also a place that you can trust each other, and also you have mutual respect.
For example, David, you're a clinical psychologist, so that would be extremely important for people you work with or clients who come to see you. Do you feel then there's a need for that, Sharon? I mean, is the concept of what is a safe space very similar in the workplace? Do adults and people who are working, do they, is there a similar definition?
Okay. I'll be really honest. I mean, I was also combing through a lot of academic research. As you know, that's where my background is currently. And what they say is a lot of research has been done in the Western context.
Yeah.
Where, you're allowed to be an individual, you're allowed to speak and even encouraged to speak your mind. Whereas in a lot of Asian organizations, which primarily, where we are supposed to conform to group norms. We look at the boss's face and we speak based on how we think he or she will feel about our response. And I think we've been conditioned to think that way.
Yeah.
I'd like to think about the naive me when I first started working. Yeah. And I would just say whatever comes to mind. And honestly, I wouldn't know better, right? I mean, to me, that's just being honesty. And my dad was just saying recently, honesty is the best policy. And I was like, I'm sorry, but I'm not going to disagree with you, but I beg to differ. In the corporate workplace, you cannot disagree with your boss openly. Yeah. Right? So to me, that is a sure sign of a safe workspace. But if you're going to ask me, why should it matter? And though this is a very age-old case study, people often pull it out and say, the case of Nokia? So I think you've heard about this. So the top-level bosses were all businessmen, They just wanted to make the bucks. They wanted the return on investment. And their answer would be, I don't want to take no as an answer. You just make it happen. The middle level managers were all the technocrats. You know, they knew all the technical stuff. They were the geeks, so to speak. They knew what they were doing wasn't going to get them where they wanted to be. But because the bosses had conditioned them not to say no, I wouldn't take no for an answer. So they hit all the figures, the numbers, and the stats. And that's why Nokia became what it became. So my point is it just something nice to have? Or are there implications for the sustainability of a business?
Yeah.
Yes, there are. So that answers the question.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. And the concept of sustainability, where we can go as excellent or as driven as you can and ignore all of this, but it might come at a long-term cost, which is very true of many companies today. I also thought about what you shared about the Asian context, and we learn about cultural dimensions or different cultural adaptations in different places, different countries. And in Malaysia, we hit 100 out of 100, or the highest bar for 100 for power distance, meaning that when we have while we do have respect for the people that lead us and the authority that we have, it may come at another cost, where we conform to what they want or what we believe they know best, and we may not feel safe when we have an intuition that something is not right? Bit into the second, put it up, especially for other thoughts that you have, because we've got a demographic that varies across all three of us, right? And you have your own industries as well, unless you suddenly moved into HR, David. I believe that you're, mainly in the clinical field, and vice versa for Sharon. I don't think you've picked up a master's in clinical psychology anytime in the recent years. So you have your own workplace culture, or you would at least be exposed to many types of cultures based on your experiences. So what is your impression of the workplace culture? And, you shared a little bit about Nokia's workplace culture, but do you think that having a safe space matters in our society to make it productive? And I really want to allow you to share your own thoughts, because that's where it marries into a fuller discussion today. So please, maybe anybody, feel free to go ahead.
Gentlemen first.
Sure. Being a clinical psychologist, I work with quite a number of individuals, employees, especially from the oil and gas, banking industries.
Right.
So, especially during the MCO years, whereby everyone is trapped at home, and at the same time, lots of expectations are coming from management. People start to feel like, hey, there's a sense of lack of trust from my management level. Like, I have to fill in timesheets for lots of things, and lots of my clients, they are complaining regarding how they are receiving double bind messages, whereby they are receiving conflicting messages from the management level. At one point, management level is saying that, hey, we focus on work-life balance. It's very essential for you to maintain a very healthy schedule. And at the same time, management is also the one who pushes you to achieve something that is beyond your capacity. So because of this double bind message that oftentimes also happens in the family, and also in industry itself, in corporate world itself, it feels very hard to build trust with your superior, whereby he at the same time telling you, hey, go and relax, but at the same time giving you more work to do. So how can I relax, and how can I balance between this greater work volume that I'm having? So which is why a lot of my clients, they are complaining regarding how the fear in them that they do not dare to actually not work over the weekend, not work after office hours, because for them it's like, hey, isn't it normal to work after office hours and carry the work over the weekend? So this fear is in them.
And their boundaries are being stepped over, but even they don't realize that, that it's not safe for that to happen, and they're accepting it as normal. I heard the word normal coming in already for what they do, right? Very interesting. Also, surprising, I suppose, because you don't feel like having to assert yourself.
So I'd like to add on to what you mentioned just now, David. Again, based on studies, and I think this is very true based on what we observe as well.
Yeah.
Prior to having a psychologically safe workspace, you need to have trust. So in academic terms, they call this an antecedent. It's just a big word to say that what leads to what. So trust leads to having a psychologically safe workspace. Now, just for the audience, what's the difference between the two? Some of you might say, yeah, so how are they really different?
Yeah.
Trust is at an individual level. It's, for example, my relationship with Jolene or David. Do I trust them as a person? But in order to have a teamwork as a group, right, in a department, the norms where we behave that is seen as acceptable is what is psychologically safe in the workspace. So that's how it's different. One is at an individual level and one is at a group level.
Right.
So going back to what you said, if I don't trust my boss, then likely, or if my boss doesn't trust me, for example, and I'm asked to fill up timesheets, or even to the extent some people said, now with Google Maps, they can, or whatever, location, they can track where you are.
Yeah,
those days you can say, I'm at the I'm working, but I'm at the bank or running errands for the family. But now if my boss wants to trace me, he or she can. Now, if my boss puts those practices in place, I have the feeling that you don't trust me, right? And similarly, I will reciprocate and I will start to have this distrust towards you. Why are you checking on me? But it's quite actually normal for the older generation. And again, this is just a stereotype, but it's typically true of the older generation managers where they don't trust you if they can't see you.
Right.
So I think the COVID-19 had that issue. I couldn't get you into the office. I don't know if you're really working. So I feel the need to put a lot of systems in place to monitor you.
Yeah.
As opposed to, I don't care as long as you deliver the results based on what we've agreed upon, right? So there are two schools of thought. But because of this distrust, as I said, it breeds a low psychological safety in the workspace. And then just going back to what you said earlier, would probably have a chat group without the boss and one with the boss. And we'll start, in a way, bitching about the boss and saying all these things, Yep. Or we'll say, okay, let's collaborate. We won't answer his WhatsApp after 7 p.m. And let's agree, yeah? Because if anyone starts to answer, he will place those expectations on us. So I think, in the workspace, these are the things that we have to navigate. And even though they say that in an organization, you can culturally have greater safety, but the reality is it really differs from team to team.
Yeah.
Because it really boils down to the managerial style, and everyone's an individual at that. Yeah.
And I'd like to pull out that last point, right? It really depends from manager or individual to individual. Because the whole purpose of this webinar, for example, isn't to place the weight of a workplace culture solely on the entire organization or on the employee, but to actually empower the people who are listening to us that it is possible. Because if it is, then there is no part that you really play in making it an effective team. But from what you've been sharing from anecdotal as well as research evidence, it is important. Or at least we would come to that conclusion that it is. Perhaps a bonus question, one that isn't in the list, do you feel like it differs from environment to environment? Now, we might have people in academia sitting with us today, those from MNCs, or maybe even those who are just 3 people in a startup, right? And do you feel like even in a 2 or 3, you need that?
I believe that environment really plays a role, like what Sharon mentioned just now. It's different from team to team. I'm personally very fortunate to have been in places whereby trust is so much. I remember my first workplace, we were even allowed to do our own things as long as we finish our work.
Right.
So back then we were still required to go to office. There's no this culture of working from home, but we are actually as if we are working from home actually while working in the in the workplace itself. So I guess it really depends on field, maybe because I'm from the mental health field, everyone is very understanding, caring, acceptance. So that could be that. Yeah.
Well, to kind of answer your question, I would kind of relate it more to at what phase the organization is in. So giving you the context as well, based on research, it's been shown that psychologically safe workplaces matter more when there's a need for creativity, there's a need to solve complex problems. What else? Kind of like group work is necessary or needful in running a business. And I think you can appreciate that as opposed to maybe certain jobs whereby individual contributors can contribute on their own. Now, why this is needful is because a psychologically safe workspace is important for learning.
Okay.
What else? Taking initiative, creativity, innovation. So as you can see, if your business is at a startup phase, that's when you have to solve a lot of problems, right?
Yeah.
You have few limited resources, right? Whether it's money or even people.
Yeah.
And you need to be able to be quick on your feet to solve the problems.
Yeah.
So this is the time when, if we have high psychological safety in the workspace, we can brainstorm, we can come up with creative ideas with whatever limited resources we have.
Yeah.
But once you reach a stage where it becomes almost like a very large organization, and everything is about control, policies, standardization, right? Then I think, I'm not saying there's no room for a psychologically safe workspace, but the difference that it makes and the impact that it had, as opposed to if you were a startup or a very creative business, might be less felt. So it's less salient. So there are certain what we call boundary conditions. That means for whom psychological safety might matter more. And so to go back to your question, as mentioned, if you're at the startup phase, or if your business is highly creative, innovative, think of the 3M sort, right?
Yeah.
Where we're allowed to make mistakes. In fact, there's a certain amount of glorification for making mistakes. But I'm really referring to 3M then. I really don't know what the corporate culture now is.
Yeah.
Because if you think about all the innovative things we have from 3M, the stick-it notepads, the Teflon non-stick surfaces, this is the sort of environment that you need where psychological safety would really make a huge difference.
True.
But if it's just business as usual, then you might not feel it as much.
Yeah. So it's a lot of different conditions or environments, and I think that helps with our audience as well to know where to place the psychological safety versus just assume that it's the best answer, the glorification of it. And I think it's realistic what you've just shared. Given that my takeaway from that is, if you need to innovate, if you need to come up with new things, or if you even need to just as a group come up with a collaborative form of something, if you're not safe psychologically, or if you don't feel safe to speak, you're only going to conform, or you won't have many new ideas, or you may think, if I say that, my boss is going to... That's something they might purposely avoid, or that we might have been accidentally encouraging people to avoid because we're so focused on the results. And I know that a lot of us, care about that. With understanding that we could utilize psychological safety for a safe space somewhere in our work culture, maybe it'll help our audience to know what are 2 or 3 core elements of safe space. They might need to know, okay, is this feasible? Does it work? And in my line of work, it just helps to know that there are ground rules or agreements. So things that, what we share will not be used against you in the future, and to follow through with that. So having agreements with your team, with who you work with, but I'm sure that there are many other elements, and I'm curious to know from your perspectives, what are 2 or 3 of those must-have core elements to build a safe space? Maybe David, any thoughts?
Sure, I guess coming from a clinical perspective, I think one very important value that I personally hold on is also acceptance. Despite the various cultures, backgrounds that the person is coming from, understanding and accepting the person as the person is very essential. You just imagine maybe a lady coming for an interview, maybe a lot of HRs, or like even I recently received people saying that, hey, she's going for an interview. The first question that they ask, are you going to get married soon?
Oh, dear.
Okay, so but when it comes to all these questions, it's already, it felt personal. It
Right.
felt being targeted. Oh, so are you judging my capability because I'm a lady, because I'm about to get married, or maybe I'm about to give birth to someone? So I think acceptance itself, regardless of backgrounds, cultures of the person, is very essential to eventually build the trust.
I see. Thank you. Yeah. Sorry, we're women. We should agree with this.
we definitely. Yeah. I mean, I met countless ladies who told me the same question was asked.
Oh dear.
Yeah, or the fact that I can't do my job now because my partner knows who I am because I'm pregnant and no one will want me. I'm thinking to myself, wow. I mean, does this kind of thinking still exist in today's world?
Love your mic.
Yeah. So I'm like, wow, it's 2023 and I'm still having this kind of thinking.
Yeah.
As opposed to like, I don't know, 20, 30 years ago, when we all started working. And shocking as the thinking is. In fact, the nurses who say that, I don't want to employ women because, there will be 9 months of unproductivity and followed by 2 to 3 months where they don't even come to work now.
Sorry, technical difficulty.
Is it okay now? So there's about 2 to 3 months where they have maternity leave and they don't even come to work. So I'd much rather hire a man, right? And I mean, we've been taught to have things like gender equality, but in the real world, in the workspace, I think you can't stop it if people have such biases.
Yeah.
Right? So it's more about colleagues, people at the senior management level, HR, being mindful and cognizant of that fact. But there's also something else that you mentioned just now. It's not so much about my boss would kill me if I say something, but very likely my boss might say, come on lah, those type of ideas won't work. I've been there, done that. I've been in this industry for more than 20 years and I can tell you your idea won't work. And this is not an hearsay. I actually experienced this.
Right.
So I had a colleague at work who had this kind of mindset and he would really talk down to his team members in that manner.
Right.
So eventually people in the team told me, why would I bother coming up with any innovative
ideas.
or creative ideas? Because everything I say is a stupid idea. It won't work. The only idea that will work is my boss's idea. Okay, so that's one scenario. Another scenario is when my boss says, don't come to me with problems. You should come to me with solutions. Think through, come to me with 2 or 3, and then tell me why you choose this particular solution. Now, though it's very efficient, because I'm hiring you to solve a problem, and that's typically what people say, right? I pay you a salary to solve a problem. Why are you coming to me with problems? The issue or the unintended consequence is that you're training your team to solve problems on their own, but they might not have the benefit of hearing different possible solutions if they share it, for example, in a team discussion.
Yep.
Or other people might not be then able to learn from this individual and see how he or she solved a problem, what they encountered. So that kind of like knowledge sharing, that kind of environment isn't going to be inculcated. You're not nurturing the environment. So the opportunity for team learning, knowledge sharing is greatly reduced. You're just training everybody to do things on their own and solve their own problems. So that's an unintended consequence.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So from listening to both of you, the key takeaways or the key parts that I'm hearing about a safe space starts with number 1, acceptance of the individual as long as they meet the ability to complete the task, regardless of gender, regardless of status in life, regardless of age. It is important to assume until they don't actually do it that they can actually do it, with the female examples being given earlier. And also I hear about the need for active listening, because without it, you have immediately dismissed or devalued your team with your words alone. So I think a lot of people say, words are sharper than swords sometimes. And I actually do believe it to be true, because as you build it over time, even from childhood to now, your sense of self-esteem comes from people saying that even if the idea doesn't work, that we heard you, we have thought about it, and then we are going to try a different direction versus, you come to me with solutions, not problems. You're stupid. This doesn't work. Only my ideas work. So there is a sense of needing to listen to the team, validate. I think the word validate the team, as well as even, I think we have to acknowledge that sometimes the ideas don't work, or that person may have done something that was out of turn, but to still treat them as a human being, all things considering, rather than worry too much that we have fallen behind, that the company is going to die, and those are real situations, but also that there are people in that company. Yeah. Thank you. We move into the second element of our webinar, which talks about whether this is really important. Are there actually issues that requires a safe space? Otherwise, we're talking about webinar for no reason and we can leave right now. But we believe, or we have questions that may spark our insight as to current issues in different companies, in our current generations, and in our future generations as well. So do you see, it's a very hard question to ask because I'm not actually sure of the answer. Do you, in your companies, in your industries, from listening to others and from research itself, see higher turnover rates in maybe even certain generations, certain types of people, certain environments? And if so, what do you think might be the cause? Any thoughts from our panel?
I did a bit of research in this. Yes, even when I was studying degree itself, undergrad, I was told by my lecturer that nowadays millennials change job quite frequently. And we are not only dealing with millennials nowadays, we are also dealing with Generation Z. And Generation Z was actually found by research to report the higher dissatisfaction at work. And when they are dissatisfied at work, they are also the group of people who are very willing to leave their workplace to find a better one. In fact, in order to keep Gen Z, there's this statement that says that you need to fulfill this. My work environment brings out the best in me. So if they don't feel like, oh, my best is actually brought out in this field, in this workspace, I'm not going to stay. Bye. So yeah, it's something alarming that we all should take note.
Yeah. I mean, quite a fair bit of it is anecdotal evidence. There's also been research, stats, to show that the younger generation, I think it has to do with the fact that their family doesn't need their financial support. And again, if you go back to my generation, the generation before, we held on to a job despite disliking it because we felt that we had to make a contribution to the family, right? Our family needed the money.
Yeah.
And so we were very practical about it. But as the family's financial well-being improves, families don't need children to go out to work just so that they can bring home the bacon, so to speak. So because of that, they have the freedom of choice. Right? And they know they have their family so-called supporting them and saying, if you're not happy, it's okay. Change, right? You can always come home. There's always a bed. We'll feed you. You know, that kind of thing. It's also the drive to find what has meaning, purpose, or my career development. In fact, I had a conversation with a very good friend recently. Some things were going on in the organization and she wasn't very happy with the way her role was being shaped in the workplace. And she said, but my career development matters to me greatly. If you're not going to give me the sort of work that's going to grow me as a person, I'm not going to stay.
Yeah.
But those days, we didn't think like that. We were afraid we weren't going to get a job, right? And this is in spite of the fact that the current economy isn't fantastic. I mean, it's not booming. It's not in a recession yet, but that person was still able to entertain that kind of thought. Yeah. So yeah, I think the other thing is, you probably heard about this. There's this trend right now about the Great Resignation. So there's a lot of pent-up dissatisfaction because people couldn't leave due to the COVID.
Right.
And so now that things are improving, they just all want to leave. So I think there's some environmental factors. There are generational factors as well. And then you have this issue about, I suppose, the midlife crisis, where people start to look and say, is this what I want with the rest of my life? Should I be doing something that matters more to me? So I think it's also different stages of your career.
Yeah. Thinking about it, I also understood that we are now able to have this discussion because society, or at least our part of society, has reached a place where, just like you said, we're not fighting a war and we're not living hand to mouth. So we can start to think. I'm not sure if Maslow's hierarchy of needs is still a relevant example today, but we're not looking just for that physical safety. We're moving further and further up to wanting self-actualization and wanting good social cues and good social environments that allow us to find purpose at work, which I'm sure you would know, given all your research. I also thought about something that my students and other people have shared recently, where there will be videos on social media, and it started off with millennials or the Gen X being interviewed. It's like a mock interview, right? Oh, tell me, why should we hire you? And they say, oh, well, I believe we are, I will be able to contribute in this way. But when it flips to the Gen Zs, the younger generation, they're like, why should I come to your company? Why is this position open? Is there a problem in your company? So they have become more interested in the goings on of the company and whether it is a suitable environment for them. They've also started asking, am I going to encounter problems in advance? So they're not worried so much about the salary anymore, possibly because, like you said, there is a safety that their parents are not struggling and that they can find a little time to explore. Now, I can't speak for every person in that generation because everyone has different environments. But to think about the fact that those who are in the lower to upper middle class who can afford to choose, they are already starting to ask, what is your company like? Why is this position open? Why did the last person leave? And they're thinking about the culture. So it is becoming a more and more, if not research proven, a more trendy way of thinking to have a workplace that values the person and not just put them as a cog into the machine. Yeah.
I think you kind of summarize it like this. In the days gone by, if you were the interviewer,
Yeah.
I were the interviewee, your question to me would be, what can you do for us?
Yes.
And now the tables are turned, and I'm asking you, what can you do for me?
Yeah.
Yeah. Why should I join you? So,
A lot of mixed reactions, obviously, because some people may consider that generation to be impetuous or spoiled or rude to even ask. I simply just see it as a mindset shift, and maybe David, you can back me up as a psychologist, but I just think that what we value has just shifted over decades and decades until now. Yeah.
Just like what Sharon has mentioned, I think our upbringing, it makes the shift in terms of our mindsets, especially the generations itself, and also exposure, technology, so much new things that they are learning and also they are seeing. So
Yeah.
why should I stay in this place when it is not honoring me, whereby every message that I'm receiving is to, hey, self-compassion, love yourself, be yourself. So why should I? So
Why should I? Yeah. And maybe that is something fair to also acknowledge on the employer side. So we just spoke about those who be interviewing and employees, but employers have their own challenges and we must acknowledge them too. What, from your experience, do you think are some of the challenges that different environments would encounter if they are trying to make the workplace one that is suitable for everyone? Obviously, no workplace, not every workplace wants to say, I don't care, and they're trying, but there are challenges. But what do you think are some of the challenges our audience and managers in the audience might face when trying to instill that safe workplace culture? Any thoughts?
I think it is indeed very challenging to build a psychological safe workplace, because of the different beliefs, upbringing, and also the different exposures that maybe managerial level and also the executive level has.
Yep.
I think this difference itself is a bit hard to resolve. So which is
Sure.
why going back to the values that we mentioned, acceptance, trust, respect, I think it actually goes both ways, just like what Jolie mentioned just now. Even if you are an executive level listening to us right now, you play an important role, because not only your bosses are respecting your boundaries by respecting your time, not asking you to work overtime to actually build a psychological safe workplace, you as an employee actually play a very huge role in this itself, whereby are you able to respect directives and also directions given by your bosses, trusting that your managers and also your bosses are actually fighting for you, are actually in this with you, instead of having the mindset that, oh, it's you versus
Right.
me. No, actually, if you want a psychology safe workplace, in clinical setting we always emphasize you, not changing the environments, but you yourself first have to make the shift, has to make the change. So are you able to risk, and are you able to also change what you are currently practicing, and trust that your bosses, your managers are able to build that safe space for you?
I think it's first it's that them versus us mentality.
Yeah.
We are the employees, they are the management. So it's us versus them.
Yeah.
Right? Are they representing us fairly? Are they even considerate of our needs? And so if I would go back to what I said earlier, if you think about how the workers or employees came about, and how this concept, it's from agriculture to industrial revolution, and they needed to train people, workers basically, to fill all the vacant positions they had.
Yeah.
So the mindset was, how can I get more out of you? Right? And that's why they had all these things about motion study, how to improve efficiency,
Yeah.
how to do things faster, doing the right things right the first time round. But now that the tables are slightly evening out, as in respect us as well, think about what you can do for us, not only what we can do for you, and then it's a conversation about us together. Not what you can get out of us, right? But what we can do for each other. I think that's a more meaningful conversation. That's one. Two, I think this thing about psychological safety, there are kind of like two aspects of it. One is kind of like, I wouldn't say nice to have, but it would be great if we had a workspace where people respected our views, where we could say what we want to say, right? On the other end, think about it, there are ethical considerations. Like personally at work, I was asked to do something that went against my values.
Right.
I felt it was ethically wrong. But I was still told to do it because this is the boss's instruction and this is the big boss. Do it. If you're not going to do it, someone else will do it anyway. So I didn't feel safe. I felt that I was being threatened as well, right? You're paid to do a job, just do it. Don't ask so many questions. So to me, there are kind of like two ends to the story. One is creating a nice workplace. One is really respecting my boundaries as well. Like even things like sexual harassment, right? All these things are the other extreme and the big no-nos. So we need to really kind of examine them both differently. And that's why in organizations, if you go into the office, you know, you've got these values, integrity, etc. So that's one. That's where we say we can have this. But sometimes, you know, your bosses will tell you, but this is what it takes to survive in the workplace. There are underhanded practices that are the norm in the industry. If we don't do it, we'll fall behind. So if you ask me, that's one challenge. The other one is really, are we really able to hire managers who are all open, who are even aware about what is safety in the workspace?
Right.
I don't even know what it means. During my time, we didn't even care, right? As long as you're the boss, I listen because I have to respect the chair. Then second thing is there a desire for me to even nurture this kind of safety in workplace?
Yeah.
What's in it for me if I do it? I don't see any benefit. You know, instead I'll have a lot of endless questions. People asking why cannot? You know, why are you doing this? Why are you not listening to me? I just want you to get the job done. Don't ask so many questions, right? Don't
Right.
make my life difficult. So it's the first two things is tackling the awareness. Second, what's in it for me if I create such a workspace for you? So if you ask me, those are the two challenges I would really think about.
Yeah, I really hear you. There are a lot of new horizons for us in talking about this, both from, and I love the HR or the realistic corporate perspective of it, because if not, it'll just be a clinical psychologist saying, do it. But the truth is, it's not so easy. And there are a lot of barriers that are either already in place or still maybe a lot of personal barriers from the managers themselves who may not see the value, who may think what I'm doing works. All I need is to replace the cogs, but my outputs will still be amazing. And we have to acknowledge that as long as there's a single step forward that's already, so having a safe space, I like what you said, that there are two different ways to look at it. And I see it as a spectrum or as a level. From a completely unsafe workspace where you may genuinely fear for your life to the most heavenly utopian place, right? And I don't know if there's ever a place out there that reaches this part. But if we could just take one step forward towards that and see the value of it, we might actually retain more people. So we talked about turnover, and I know that managers don't always see the value, but now that they have to cater to a generation that values it, they may have to start singing a different song at the end of the day. And then it's not a prescription, it's something for our audience to consider. There are going to be two more questions in the concept of current issues, and then we will head into a Q&A from our audience. So for those who are listening to us and you have questions, do type it into the Zoom chat and our team will be pulling up a couple of the questions shortly. If we can't address them in the first part, there is also a final Q&A after part 3 on possible solutions. So for our last couple of questions before the Q&A, let's take a hope that whoever is listening today is already open to the idea of building a better safe space. It could come across as one way or the other because a lot of safe spaces and conversations are about talking. It can also go the other way, and I like what David shared earlier about how, and I know he leads a team as well, that the team plays as much of a part in contributing to the safe space as the manager does. And sometimes it turns into a sounding board. It turns into a space where you just share all of your problems because you're so connected and so trusted, and that you're like, I just want to tell you everything, and I hope you got I hope you got an answer from me, right? But we know that there's a way to make that space a place of action, a place of growth, to build a stronger sense of belonging with the time that they have. So maybe what are one or two key considerations to differentiate a sounding board and a ranting space towards an actual safe space where there is progress and growth? David, any thoughts?
Sure. Jolene, I think you mentioned quite a number of key values or key points that a safe space needs to have.
Yeah.
So a safe space requires, it's actually two-way. It's not one way whereby you are complaining, ranting and all. It requires you seeking support, and at the same time you have to realize that you equally play a strong role in supporting. So it's two ways when it comes to a safe space. Not only you complaining, but also at the same time, you are also supporting, you are also seeing the needs and also trying to fill in. Of course, bringing back to clinical session, I think one very important value that can be applied in workplace also is confidentiality. So when it comes to workplace, sometimes there are workplace gossiping, and that's when bullying actually disrupts the safe space that has been built. So when your colleagues actually come to you to talk about certain issues that they are facing, especially maybe with some other colleagues or even with bosses, can they trust you with the information? And if they can trust you with the information that it will not leak out and impact them, I think that itself actually builds a very strong safe space for everyone in the workplace itself. Right. So confidentiality, two-way supporting, I think is very two important values that we need to have.
Yeah, I can relate to what you said, David. In fact, a friend of mine just joined an organization, and she said in the first week where I joined the organization, my boss started to tell me all the insights, news, and stories about A, B, C, D, E within the organization. My immediate response was, you better not say anything to her. Otherwise, whatever you say will also leak.
It goes both ways, right?
Yeah, it goes both ways. So, you know, in my career, I've met people like that. To them, they think they're just being very open and transparent. But I think they don't realize that it gives people the impression that I can't trust you. You're likely to be like a gramophone. Bulletin board. You'll update everyone about what's going on. So being able to maintain confidences is very important. But I think your question was, if I'm going to encourage you to be open, you know, to speak your mind, say what you want to say, is it likely that we're just going to end up hearing you complain incessantly? So I think this boils down to individual nature, though. Not everyone's like that. Some people speak their mind, some people don't. So to those that are very uninhibited and they speak their mind, then if you're the manager and you're listening, you kind of need to differentiate what are issues being brought forward that impact performance and productivity, and what are just that person's personal peeves, just things he or she doesn't like. So as you mentioned, because I do a little bit of coaching, it's also to use a little bit of questioning techniques to get the person to think, is this affecting my productivity, or is just me? You know, I just want to rant and rave. Depending on my level of relationship with the person, I would say if I have that level of relationship of high trust with that person, I would say, look, this is going to affect your productivity at work and your mental well-being. If you're going to keep looking at everything very negatively and complain, you're going to feel unhappy, and it's going to affect how you come to work and perform, right?
True.
And you don't want to be unhappy all day long. So if you just want to let it out, I'll listen to you for 5 minutes. But after that, once you've cleared it out of your system, get back to what it is. But if you're going to complain incessantly throughout the whole day, then it's just not going to be productive for you and for the team environment. So I think there has to be that discerning mechanism, because if you keep shutting the person down, eventually one day when the person has serious issues, he or she is not going to come and talk to you as well. So you've got to be open enough, but also discerning to know what to say and what not to say, and when it's appropriate to tackle that matter.
Right. So having I guess coming back to ground rules, or coming back to why are we here today to talk, and to hopefully by the end of that time reach an outcome that the person would be satisfied with, instead of using it as the water cooler session, right? Yeah. So from the 3 questions that we've had about the issues that are currently in our generations, in our workplaces, if I could ask for maybe in a short summary, the importance of building a safe space. Why would you personally find it important at the end of the day to still have a safe space in a working environment despite the challenges that we had faced? Any thoughts, maybe Sharon?
I think I'll go back to what I said earlier. There will definitely be occasions when people need to be able to feel comfortable to speak up. Especially when it's matters pertaining to the organization, serious matters at hand. You need to be able to feel comfortable to bring it up. Otherwise, it's going to affect the top line or the bottom line. I think those are really serious matters and need to be brought to their attention. But sometimes it could also be things, as I mentioned, like criminal breaches of trust, any underhanded going-ons, things that you know you can speak up in confidence and quietly and ask. And I think that's why organizations have this like whistleblower policies. And they need to feel that it will be respected. As opposed to what you mentioned, I used to work in a place where everybody knew what everybody else was earning. Even though it was like the open secret. But it's like, how can you know what is everybody's salary? Although in some organizations, it is very transparent. And I think that's fair, because you come into an organization knowing it's transparent. But if you know it's being leaked out by someone in finance or whatever, you don't feel comfortable. You know that there are certain things that you can't trust, you can't speak. So those type of organizations, I feel, breed a certain level of distrust, and you're going to hide away certain things. Right? And or if your boss says, hey, this type of thing, don't let so and so know, cannot tell, you have to do it quietly. So then you kind of get the feeling, so there are certain unwritten codes of behavior, what I can say, what I cannot say, what I can do, what I cannot do. And so you start to watch yourself, you're mindful. And like I said, it reaches a point where if it impacts performance, right, large or small, it doesn't matter, I feel then that needs to be nipped in the bud. You cannot afford to have this. So if you ask me, end of the day, a lot of things are nice to have, but if it's going to impact sustainability and performance of an organization, then it's a big no-no.
Thank you.
I think just like what Sharon has mentioned, when you don't feel safe, you feel fearful. When you feel fearful, it impacts your performance. You cannot be creative and all.
Yeah.
But I'm going to bring this to a personal level. Just imagine the amount of time you spend at work and also the years that you are actually spending at a workplace. If you do not feel safe and you always have to put up a pretentious front or living up another identity at a workplace, and you spend 1/3 of your day in a workspace, some of you more,
Yeah.
just imagine how it impacts you and your family. So we heard a lot about people bringing back the work stress towards the family. And just imagine what kind of children, what kind of nations we are building. So psychological work safety in the workplace is essential in the workspace performance itself, but it's also very important at a very personal well-being level, whereby the nation actually would be impacted by this itself, because children, family is a very important unit that ultimately will be impacted by workspace also.
So a huge ripple effect across everything, right? Yeah. Thank you for sharing to both of you. We're going to bring in a couple of questions from our audience if there are any. Just going to take a check from our team. Good, no questions so far. Lovely, we've got other questions too, so we're not lacking in questions. Again, if you have anything, please continue to share it through the Zoom chat and we will come and address you shortly. Excuse me. Let's go into possible solutions then. Since we have understood the basis of why we are sharing in this webinar today, we'd like to also bring some hope or bring some easy, simple and practical solutions for our audience so that they can understand and apply in their lives as well. So we'll start with the first of the 3 questions, and we wanted to ask our panel about, maybe we've heard a lot about the benefits already, but maybe a personal experience on practicing safe spaces and how that can. So we've heard a lot about the problems of not having a safe space, or the problems that are in our workspaces. But what about the benefits? How are we going to benefit from practicing safe spaces? And if you have any personal anecdotes, or even if research has shown that different safe spaces have led to better productivity, it'll be really interesting to hear from both of you.
I think safe space, like what we have mentioned previously, yes, it definitely results in a lot of benefits. Like I mentioned previously, that I was very fortunate and very blessed to actually be in a workspace that actually promotes much psychological safety, where I can feel free to share my thoughts. I'm free to voice out and experiment, explore. So I remember working in Taylor's itself, I was given much freedom to make changes to certain assignments. I was entrusted with the responsibilities given to me, and because of that, just like Sharon mentioned just now, creativity flows. And as creativity flows, when I see the babies of my work also, I feel fulfilled as an individual, and thus my satisfaction level at work increases. So all these sort of benefits is something personally you can experience when a safe space is there.
I think the caveat to what you're saying, though, is making sure that the people in your team are competent in the first place.
Yes.
So if you empower people who are incompetent, you're not going to get the results you want. So which boils down to getting the right person in the right place, which was the song I used to sing when I worked in a company that did the HR profiling. And the question asked then was, how do we get in the right people? And I think understanding, it's like kind of buying I always use this analogy. It's like buying a car. You love the shape, you love the feel of driving it, but you know that the petrol consumption is going to be high. But when you buy it, you already know the pros and cons that come with the car. So when you're acquiring an employee, they like to use the word talent acquisition these days.
Yes.
Which is just hiring if you think about it. Yeah, but it's true. When you bring someone into an organization, that person is a package, good and bad, right? So you've got to know what are the person's weaknesses or areas of development. You work with those, but at least you know what you're getting. And then you make sure you bring in the person who can fit kind of with your working style or complement if you're open enough. For example, I know bosses who are very strategic in their thinking. They have a vision of where they want to be, but they're not very organized. So they need someone to dot the I's, cross the T's, so to speak, right?
Yeah.
Organize things, get it done for them, plan the details. So if you know you're like that, very strategic, big picture, then you hire in someone who's very organized. You don't hire someone who's as messy as you, and then the two of you are not going to get anything done, right?
Yeah.
Someone's going to forget deadlines, all that kind of thing. So if you're open enough, find someone to complement you, but also make sure that that person fits into the sort of way you want to get things done, right? And for the person's area of development, make sure, as I said, you know what it is, and you're willing to coach or mentor that person. You don't hire the person, bring them in and start criticizing that they can't do this, they're not like that. But that's what you got. You should have been better at assessing the person or getting to know the person before that. Don't bring the person in and then set the person up for failure. So that's my point. At least have that decency. Don't set the person up for failure. So if you ask me in terms of practical anecdotes, just like David, I had many bosses throughout my life. Some who set me up for failure, but of course I was very much younger then and didn't know what it took to succeed in a particular role. But as you kind of matured and grew in an organization, you know what sort of boss you work best with and how you can complement the person. And I was fortunate also to have a boss who gave me a lot of autonomy, the freedom to do things as long as you get it done within the deadline, within agreed standards. And I found that for me that works best. Not necessarily for everyone. I've also met people who are very rigid. They need standard of SOPs, guidelines. They need to be told what to do. So again, it's different for everyone, but for me that worked well. So then I was able to come up with various ways to bring about a solution. I didn't like someone breathing down my neck. So that's just me. But it's, for the audience out there, know what your working style and preference is like. And know what sort of person complements or works best with you. And I think that's the best recommendation, because we can't mold every single person to fit this criteria. It's not going to work that way. You are you, I am I. We're all here individuals. But know what works best, and then bring in those people and work with them to get to where you want to be.
So if I could sum up what both of you were sharing from your stories and from your experiences, having a safe space does not automatically guarantee competence. And when we have to acknowledge that, because everybody comes in with different sets. But when you have that safe space anyway, and you also add in additional measures like being able to choose the right person to fit your company in the first place, you will be able to have better productivity. And you would also have people who will know themselves better. So I heard, for example, Sharon, you evolved and grew over time to know what works best for you and how that can match the people who hired you. And I think that's really important, because even as myself teaching in tailors, I start them young and I know that I give them a safe space, but I hold them accountable for their work. They may be able to tell me that they've made a mistake and grow from there. And if they're really unable to meet that competence and they're still not submitting the work, they're still not showing up where they need to show up, then they are truly held accountable instead of fearing for their personal safety or their ability to work and give optimal output in their studies. And I think of safe space as that. Yes, maybe being a bit too trusting and a bit too kind may bite you back, but that is on the person and not on the manager. If you keep it safe and everyone who is there truly willing to work towards excellence with you continues, then the majority, and I know it's because one bad apple ruins the whole bunch sometimes, and it can get very stressful as somebody who leads a team. But to know that when you have a safe space that people are more willing to stay and more willing to try despite the mistakes that may not have met your standards, I think from hearing both of you, there is a sense of unity and understanding that it does lead there, even with that fear of not meeting the output of the company. Yeah.
So you learn how to come up with solutions better.
Yeah.
You're more creative.
Yep.
And as you said, you're more proactive. So you don't sit and wait to be told what to do. You
Yep.
take the initiative to get things
Yes.
done. And I think bosses want that kind of attitude.
Yeah, exactly. So if we are interested in the benefits of safe spaces, I'm curious to hear from both of you, how can perhaps organizations as a big picture, maybe someone in the audience today is able to influence on a large scale, maybe they are part of that startup and they are the organization, how can we instill this culture better? How can we even spread the conversations at different levels? So for me personally, I believe that the ripple effect is real. And once you have one point of influence, that person has another point of influence. How can we ensure that if we were to encourage organizations to build safe spaces, they can do so on levels that they can make an impact in? And any thoughts from anyone?
I'm going to speak maybe at a higher level on what kind of things that organizations can do. I would say, going back to the value of acceptance, non-discriminative policy would be really, really good. So how are you not having stereotypical attitudes towards certain individuals? How are you not favoring certain individuals from certain backgrounds? I think having that policy itself is very important, but at the same time, helping people to have a strong buy-in towards this policy, I think, is equally important. When do people feel not safe? Is when there are lots of things that they cannot do. Just taking an example of Harry Potter, when people cannot speak the word of Voldemort, people are like fear. He cannot say this, cannot do that. So when people cannot do this, cannot do that, because we have this non-discriminative policy, so you cannot do this, you cannot do that. I'm also going to bring in church culture into this discussion as well. A lot of times people think that, as a Christian, you cannot do this, you cannot do that. So when it comes to cannot, people feel fear. It doesn't feel safe. But however, if you truly dive into Christianity and you truly go in deeper and see, it's not that I cannot do this, but I choose not to do this. So are your employees able to see that I'm choosing not to do this, I'm protecting the boundaries, I'm actually safeguarding the whole culture of a safe workplace. I'm in this together with you, not that I'm receiving direction that I cannot, but I'm in this together to together build a safe culture. I think that is very important if you can allow the whole organization to actually move in this culture itself.
Yeah. I hear what you're saying, and the thing is, it's about being inclusive. One of the things I enjoyed working with my boss was when he said, what can we do about this? He never said to me, what can you do about this? And the fact that he used the words we...
Can you check your mic if you don't mind? It's on?
The fact that he used the word we made me feel that he was part of the problem and part of the solution as well. He wasn't just throwing the ball to me and saying, you get it done. you come up with a solution for me. So what research has kind of found is that if the boss or the leader is supportive, gives clear instructions, directions, what needs to be done by when, and what are maybe some of the guidelines, is supportive, as Jolene mentioned, has active listening, really listens and seeks to understand. And this one I take a note from Covey, from his
Stephen Covey.
Seek first to understand before being understood. Very often we jump to conclusions and we think we know why someone did something. Always ask first, what were you thinking? Share with me, right? Or what motivated you to do this? Yeah. And then you understand the other person's point of view before you impose your reasoning with that person. The other one is being very ethical. So if I see you as someone who holds on to your values and principles and you do the right thing, I'm more likely to trust you. But if I know that you're the sort of boss who does a lot of hanky-panky, underhanded things, then I'm less likely to trust you as well. So these are the things that really can nurture that sort of and foster that kind of safe environment.
Really 100% on board with the concept of ethics. If an organization can finds that the psychological aspect of safety a little hard to implement, if nothing else, there should be a sense of ethics and follow through with the ethics, because that those ethics will ripple across into the whole organization. And if this particular company is more liable to do certain things, then it's not so great anymore. But if this company continues to follow through, there is no room in that sense for it to come in otherwise. And ethics, at least the concepts of values and missions and visions, build up the company. But if there's a follow through, it helps. And at least those who are coming into the company or those who are coming into the organization, they know what the company stands for. And that's a choice that they make when they enter. So if ethics can ripple across, I think that's at least a wonderful start for most, if any, organization.
And one last thing that is needful to foster a safe work environment is really the interpersonal relationships within the team. Again, this isn't an individual contribution level. It's more at a group or team level. So cliche as it may sound, because on every value you will see the word teamwork. Right? In any organization, teamwork, integrity, this is the mantra that most organizations chant. But really, it's fostering that relationship in a team, making sure that people feel comfortable to work together and speak their mind. And sounds easy, but really isn't easy, because we are all we all have different personalities and idiosyncrasies. So it's likely that I might not like something about you, or you might not like something about me. But really, when it comes to workplace, what does the boss do to foster that kind of relationship? I'd like to share a story here with you, which I heard from a psychologist actually, who was working with a consulting firm, one of the top 4. And she said, whenever we got very stressed delivering a project, and that's what consulting world is like, they're always burning the midnight oil, right? And she noticed that the team was very stressed. She would kind of foster a relationship, but also help distress a little bit by bringing, I think it was an all-girls team then, the girls out to a massage or ice cream. And bear in mind, this was during working hours.
Wow.
So I went, wow, you did what? And she was like, but why not? We work long after working hours. Till midnight. So managing my team's emotional well-being is very important, but it was also fostering that we're in this together. Let's go out for a coffee or a massage or an ice cream, and laughing, de-stressing, doing whatever, that kind of us time, I feel is very important. Then again, I'm thinking, how many bosses are like you, honestly? But really, that little insight, that feel good, is really, really important, because I think that feel good, as you mentioned, that emotional aspect is very often neglected in the workplace. Bosses are always about deadlines, get things done, right? How you feel, that's your business. I don't care, right? But at that level, that's truly what being a leader is, and not just a manager.
So a key distinction between how you manage a team or how you manage the output versus how you lead the people to get there. And I think back to David's statement that really we do spend at least 40 hours, if not more, of our time being paid to do these things, true. But for some people, we can acknowledge that sometimes money isn't enough. and we need more, and we need to be human. I really just think that this whole discussion today is about how can we humanize what we have considered to be very robotic and mechanical aspects of our life, because we're so busy trying to do our best, forget that it's okay if we don't always get to do our best, and we have to have discussions about that, right? Yeah. I love that story that you shared, Sharon, because it actually leads us to our final questions on what employers can. This is our cue to the audience. If you have any maybe 5 seconds, you write your questions at once, share any stories or any thoughts, and we'll be able to address them right after this very last question before we end today. So let's go into our last question while our audience thinks about what they want to ask you as a panel. And it's a very easy question to me, as in easy to ask. Maybe the question might bring up different answers. And we want to serve our audience today. We know that they come from different backgrounds. They might be academics, execs, they might actually be leading a team. Maybe a president is in there somewhere. I'm not too sure. I can't see the Zoom chat, but employees will require safe spaces to be built at some point, even if one-on-one or with a group of people, right? So how can employers encourage each other, or how can they themselves start practicing this safe space? If there could be 1 or 2 key tips that they can take away and go, okay, I'm going to start practicing this, and I already have leveled up a little bit throughout the time. So any inputs, any insights from our panel today? Yeah.
So I kind of like to think that managing yourself and knowing yourself is really important. So I would say this, we kind of take for granted and think that we know ourselves when there might be blind spots. There might be areas where we don't know ourselves as much. So use whatever tools, resources, input you can get from the people around you who are not afraid to speak their mind. And notice yourself. Notice your moods, your behaviors, and your tendencies. For example, and this comes from research, but I'm going to relate it to a real life incident. I'm sure David's familiar with the Big 5 personality, and one of which is called neuroticism. In simple layman terms, it just means what's your mood for the day? How likely are you to be moody versus someone who's very stable? So I'm married to someone who's very stable. And everyone says, such a good-natured guy. And I'm a little bit on the other end. But over time, I've kind of noticed that, okay, if I'm cross, I will just say something, and then I'll just find time to keep cool, collect myself, and then I'll come back and get the thing done. And how this might impact your team or safety in the workspace is, I like to think of the days when I had to go in and see my boss, and I would ask the secretary, how's the weather today? And I think some of you are probably laughing out there. You've probably been there and done that as well. Wow. So if you are that boss, and you know that people have to look at the weather before they come in and see you, please make sure you manage your weather accordingly, right? If you're not feeling good about yourselves, find a way to collect yourselves, calm, gain composure before you talk to someone, because what you say and how you make people feel are really going to impact them. Not everyone is Mahatma Gandhi, or not everyone is able to keep themselves neutral despite having been bashed or having had to face a tough conversation with a boss. So manage yourself first. Second, as I mentioned just now, you probably may not be the sort who bring your team out for massage or ice creams during work time, but do nurture that kind of meaningful relationship with your team. Don't do it just for the sake of doing it. Do it because you really want to be able to build up that teamwork, knowing that if they get along well, they're going to be more productive, and you're going to have a more productive department. Okay? So, and find out what it is they like to do. Don't do what you want to do. Don't do the stereotypical, oh, let's go for a meal, because I think that's the easiest to do. Do something that they want to do. So I think in design thinking, it's called the empathy map. Ask them what they want. Again, not every team member enjoys it, so you've got to kind of find a middle ground as well. So you've got to know what your team likes and doesn't like. Ask, don't assume. Okay? And three, ideally, I think at an organization level, it would be nice if HR had supportive practices, or if you had policies such as, I don't know, Innovation Day or Creativity Day, and then you kind of let the team just brainstorm and work together and have fun doing it on things they want to do. And I think, again, this might be 3M or another organization where they set aside one day, or even, I don't know, Google or Facebook, whatever, those days anyway, would set aside one day where people could tackle problems they want to tackle for the organization. If you kind of foster that kind of environment, then you're also letting people know it's all right to come up with crazy ideas and make mistakes. We tolerate it, right?
Yeah.
And that would also eventually contribute to a safe space. That's
you.
all from my end. David?
Thank you, Sharon. I like what she mentioned regarding understanding your own needs first, and also understand the needs of the others that you are managing. I just want to add on to one thing itself is to be in sync. So to practice what you preach. So I recently learned from a child psychologist regarding children's behavior. Yeah, like a lot of times children throw tantrum. It's because adults, they are not in sync. Mommy or daddy was supposed to feel sad at this moment, but they are smiling. So which is why they feel fearful, because this is not the typical mom or dad who would react in such situation. So as adults, we learn to put up lots of potential fronts to manage in different situations. But one thing that I just want to encourage all of us is to be genuine, is to be vulnerable, is to be you, and to be in sync with what you preach. If you mention that well-being is so important, safety is so important, practice that. Bring your team out for ice cream, for lots of things that you believe that, hey, it's something that you would enjoy. So take care of yourself, take care of your team, at the same time, just be you.
So having that sense of stability, that connection between what you say and what you do is going to actually build that predictability for the team as well. Lovely. We've come to the end of our questions for today, and I know that there are a couple of questions waiting in the audience. So first and foremost, we want to thank you for the questions that are coming in. Before we address the questions, there are two things that I'd like to highlight. Number one, by the end of the webinar, a feedback form will be sent out. And because we've had an interesting discussion today, please continue to give us some constructive thoughts or some praise, depending on how you felt about the webinar. So we'll be sending that into the chat shortly, which you can fill up. And the second thing is, while we are answering the questions, we will also be sharing ways that you can connect with the panel in case you prefer to ask them one-on-one. So we will be sharing social media as we answer our questions. So let's have a question from our audience today. I'm not sure how it's going to be passed out. Oh, lovely. It's coming up on the screen for us. So what is the best way to deal with teams? So this might be from somebody who's leading a team that they're not cooperative enough and they may not want to contribute to the positive work culture. What are one or two pieces of advice from your experience? Give you a couple of seconds to think.
I like this question because the person who is asking the question actually want to build a positive work culture. So you are already having a mindset that, yes, safety, positive work culture is important. However, you probably have 1-2 members who are not cooperative with you with certain things that you want to implement. I guess there is a lack of understanding between the two parties, whereby when you want to instill certain thing that you think is positive, maybe your team members do not see that as something that is positive for them. Or maybe there are certain challenges that they see which is very difficult on their side to need to maybe sacrifice or to do in order to reach the positive standard that you hope to achieve. I guess a conversation, a vulnerable conversation, is what you can have with your team members, whereby you can try to understand what is actually positive for them. When you mention certain positivity, is this at the expense of certain things that they are already in their own comfort zone?
Right.
And by analyzing that, maybe perhaps you can move the actions a bit.
Any thoughts, Sharon?
Yeah. Kind of see this question in two ways. One is, as David said, you may be the manager of this team, or you may be someone that has to work with another team. And one of the complaints I often get is, for example, Department A doesn't want to provide the report to me on time, and I'm in charge of compiling or collating, and it's delaying my deadline because they are not submitting me the data, the information. That's why they're not cooperative. And when I ask them to do anything, because I'm not their boss, they will grumble, they will complain, they don't want to do it. And I think this, as David mentioned, if we ask people to do extra work, it's very likely that you will get that kind of response, right? So it's empathizing with them, really building that human relationship. And I say this with hindsight, based on my own personal experience. I had a colleague at work who was very snippy with me, always has a lot of nasty things to say, throws back all my claims, tells me I didn't do this right and doing that right. So I started to look at the person and said, okay, I'll try to be friends with this person. Now, this might not work with everyone, yeah.
Okay.
You cannot say, Sharon said to buy more coffee or kuih or nasi lemak and it's bound to work. It's not. But I think, end of the day, we're all human beings. And we appreciate it if we feel sincerely that the person is making an effort to get to know us.
Yep.
And be a good colleague, if not a friend. So the basics is really building that relationship. But if you think about it, most of us are so busy at work and we just take it for granted. You have something to do, you need to do it because that's the deadline my boss gave me, and I'm telling you. But I don't have the time to build relationships with you. I'm not that sort of person. You've got to think about it as, what are possible ways for me to gain cooperation? A, be a friend to the person. B, help the person solve a problem at work, and that person will then learn to trust you or even like you and reciprocate. So it's about building that reciprocal relationship, right? It can, as I said, it can come from just pure friendship, or it can come from a fact that you've helped me solve a problem, you've taught me how to do something, and I've come to look upon you as someone I can turn to. And so when you ask me to do work next time, I'm more likely to do it for you because you're someone I appreciate and I like. So it's just building bottom lines like that, right? But of course, there are people, as I said, who will always say, that's not me. You have a job to do, get it done. Well, if you're going to have that kind of mindset, then you're going to have to likely contend with the fact that people will resist deadlines and that you would have to put up with certain complaints and all that. Of course, you might say, hey, this is just work lah. Come on, I'm also having the rush deadlines. Why are you making it so difficult for me? Remember this, everyone is an individual, right? And building relationships is key. So that's 2 cents from me.
Thank you both. I hear a lot of the need to build trust, to have that honest conversations as well, and to turun padang, to get down to the ground level and to reconnect with the teams, and very relevant to student groups who come to complaining to me that their group project's not working out. And the truth is, sometimes you just need to have an honest conversation that we have to start from ground zero again, right? Thank you. Gonna give a quick check to my team. Are there any further questions? If we are good to go, then we want to say thank you very much to Sharon Cheah and David Wong for coming in today. We really appreciate that you have given your 2 cents to our audience. And if you'd like to connect with our panel, Sharon and David's pages are shared on the webinar page, the webinar screen, but we will also be copy pasting where possible the links into the Zoom chat before you leave today. Once again, a warm sense of appreciation to all of you for coming in and listening today. We also hope that you will continue to give us feedback. It takes about 1-2 minutes to fill out, allowing us to hear from you and to value your thoughts as well. So with that, I think we've come to the end of our webinar on instilling a safe and positive workplace culture. Thank you very much, David, Sharon. And thank you to our audience. We'll see you next time for our next webinar. Bye-bye. Thank you. Thank you, Sharon. Thank you, David. Hope you were comfortable enough. All was well.